The evening air was crisp as David stepped out of his car, stretching after the long drive. The small town hadn't changed much since he left for college over a decade ago. The same quiet streets, the same streetlights humming with electricity, the same old houses lined up like memories frozen in time. He had returned to sell his late parents' home, a house that had once been filled with warmth, but now stood as a relic of the past. As he made his way to the front door, something fell off. A presence, a feeling like someone was watching him. He turned, scanning the street. The houses across from him remained dark, lifeless. But then, his eyes landed on the house next door. It was supposed to be empty. The family who had lived there had moved away years ago. Yet, the porch light was on, and standing there, on the steps, was a woman. She was beautiful, not just in the usual way but in a way that made his heart stutter, his breath catch. She had long, silver-white hair that caught the glow of the street lamp, skin so smooth it seemed almost unreal, and eyes deep, shimmering violet eyes that held 1,000 unspoken words. A flicker of something familiar struck him, a memory, a face. "David," she said, her voice smooth as silk yet filled with emotion. "Do you remember me?" His mind spun. He knew that voice. It was softer now, more mature, but still the same. A name surfaced in his mind. Anna. A slow smile spread across her lips. "You do remember?" His chest tightened. Anna had been his childhood best friend. They had spent their summers running through the fields, climbing trees, watching the stars late at night. Then, one day, her family had moved away. No explanation, no goodbyes. He had never seen her again. But this wasn't possible. Anna had been human. You disappeared," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We were just kids, and then one day, you were gone." Her smile faltered for a moment. She stepped closer. "I didn't leave by choice. My family had to go. We were different." His mind struggled to piece things together. Different how? Anna hesitated, then sighed. "David, I'm not human." He let out a nervous laugh. "Come on, Anna, this isn't funny." She held out her hand. "I'm serious. You always wondered why my family was so private, why we never let anyone inside our home. It's because we were hiding. My parents were researchers, studying human life up close. We lived here, among you, until we were called back." David stared at her. "Called back? Back where?" She glanced up at the night sky. "Home, another world." His skin prickled. This had to be a joke, but the way she looked at him, the way her eyes shimmered with an unnatural light, told him otherwise. He took a shaky breath. "So why are you here now?" "Because I never forgot you," she said softly. "I fought to come back, to see if you were still here. I wanted to know if you remembered me." David rubbed his temple. This was impossible, wasn't it? Yet, deep in his heart, he knew Anna wasn't lying. It explained so much why her family had been so secretive, why they had left so suddenly, why no one had ever spoken of them again. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "You don't have to say anything," she whispered. "I just needed to see you one last time." One last time. The words sent a chill through him. Anna gave him a sad smile. "I can't stay. This visit wasn't exactly approved, but I needed to see you, to tell you the truth." His heart pounded. "So you're just going to disappear again, just like before?" She reached out, her fingers barely brushing against his. "I wish it were different." A lump formed in his throat. "Then make it different." Her eyes filled with emotion. "I can't, David. If I stay, it would put both of us in danger." He wanted to protest, to argue, but he saw the pain in her eyes. She wasn't choosing to leave, she had to. A quiet understanding settled between them. He had lost her once, and now he was losing her again, but this time, at least, he knew the truth. Anna stepped back, her figure glowing faintly in the dim light. "Look at the stars, David. Whenever you do, know that I'm looking too." His chest ached as he watched her turn away, walking toward the shadows. A soft hum filled the air, and then she was gone. David stood there, staring at the empty space where she had been. The night felt heavier now, the world quieter. He looked up at the sky, and for the first time in years, he believed in something more. I was on my way home from work, the same path I had walked 1,000 times before. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the quiet neighborhood. As I passed by the old house next door, a strange feeling washed over me. It had been abandoned for years, yet something about it tonight felt different. Then I saw her. She stood on the porch, leaning against the wooden railing, looking right at me. Her face was strikingly familiar, yet something deep inside me knew it wasn't possible. She had the same bright green eyes I had once known, the same soft smile, but there was an otherworldly glow to her skin, a shimmer that seemed almost unreal. "Ethan," she said, her voice carrying a weight I couldn't place. "Do you remember me?" I frowned. See, my name in her mouth felt like an echo from the past. I searched her face, trying to connect the dots, and then like a flood breaking through a dam, memories rushed back. "Lena," I whispered. She smiled, and in that moment, I was a child again, running through the backyard, playing hide and seek with my best friend. Lena had been my neighbor, my closest companion, the girl who had suddenly disappeared one summer without a trace. No one had ever known what happened to her. But she was here, and she was different. "I knew you remember," she said softly. "I've waited so long for this." My legs felt unsteady, but I stepped closer. "Lena, where have you been? What happened to you?" She hesitated, glancing at the sky before meeting my gaze. "I wasn't supposed to come back. I wasn't supposed to exist in your world anymore." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "Ethan, I'm not who you think I am. I never was." The air between us grew heavy. I should have felt fear, but I didn't. This was Lena. She raised her hand, and for the first time, I noticed the way the light bent around her fingers, like a ripple in water. "I was never human," she admitted. "My family came to this planet to hide. We lived here, blending in, trying to be normal, but they found us. Oh, the ones who wanted us gone." Her voice wavered. "I was taken away before they could find me here. My parents, they weren't so lucky." A lump formed in my throat. "Lena, She shook her head. "I came back to see if anything was left, if I still had a place here, and then I saw you." I wanted to say something, to make sense of it all, but my mind was spinning. "You're an alien." She let out a small laugh. "I guess that's what you call me." Silence settled between us. Despite everything, I couldn't help but smile. "I always knew you were different." Her eyes softened. "And you never treated me like I was?" A breeze passed through the trees, as she turned her head, listening to something I couldn't hear. When she looked back at me, I saw sadness in her eyes. "I have to leave, Ethan." Panic flared in my chest. "No, you just got back. You can't." "I don't belong here," she said gently. "If I stay, they'll come for me, and they won't stop at just me." I clenched my fists. "There has to be another way." She stepped closer, reaching out to touch my hand. Her fingers were warm. "Well, just like I remembered. You gave me a childhood, a home when I had none. I will never forget that." My throat tightened. "Neither will I." She smiled, but there was pain behind it. "I have to go." I wanted to stop her, to beg her to stay, but deep down, I knew she was right. She had survived once. I couldn't be the reason she was caught now. She stepped back, and for the first time, I noticed the faint glow behind her, an opening in the air, like a door to somewhere else. "Will I ever see you again?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated, then smiled. "Look at the stars, Ethan. I'll be there." And with that, she stepped through the light, vanishing before my eyes. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty porch, my heart heavy yet full of something I couldn't quite name. Lena was gone, but she had been real, and no matter how many years passed, I would never forget the girl next door, my best friend, my childhood companion, the alien beauty who had once called Earth her home. I was halfway through my grocery list when I saw her. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. She looked familiar, but in a way that didn't make sense. Her face triggered an old memory, something buried deep in childhood. She stood near the fruit aisle, her silver gray eyes locked onto mine. A faint smile touched her lips, as if she knew me. "Ethan Carter," she said, her voice smooth, almost musical. I frowned. See, no one had called me by my full name in years. "Do I know you?" She tilted her head slightly. Study me. You should. There was something about her, something unsettling yet oddly comforting. Her features were striking, flawless skin, high cheekbones, and hair that shimmered like strands of moonlight. Not dyed, not fake, just unearthly. I'm sorry, I said, shaking my head. I don't. She took a step closer, her expression softening. It's me, Ethan, Nia, your childhood neighbor. I felt a jolt in my chest. That name, Nia. I hadn't thought about her in years. My old neighbor, my first real friend, the girl who had moved away without a word when we were 10. But this woman, this impossible woman, looked nothing like the Nia I remembered. Nia, my voice cracked slightly. That's not possible. Her smile deepened. And why not? I struggled for words. Memories of our childhood rushed back, summer days spent running through the woods, the secret hideout behind my house. The way she always seemed a little different. I had chalked it up to her being shy, maybe just unusual, but now no, I wasn't so sure. You moved, I said, my voice unsteady. Yes, she nodded. I had to leave. Something in the way she said it made my skin prickle. Why? She hesitated, glancing around the store. Not here. I didn't know why, but I followed her. It felt like the most natural thing to do. We walked outside, past the parking lot, and into the small park across the street. She stopped beneath a street lamp, the soft glow making her look even less human. I wasn't supposed to be here, she said, her tone quieter now, but I was young. I was curious. I swallowed hard. What are you saying? She took a deep breath. Ethan, I'm not human. The words hung in there, almost unreal. I let out a breathless laugh, shaking my head. Come on, that's... Listen to me, she interrupted gently. I was sent here with my family. We were meant to observe, not to stay, but I met you, and I wanted to stay longer. My heart pounded. This is crazy. She smiled, a little sadly. Is it? My mind flashed back to the strange things about her as a kid. The way she always knew things she shouldn't. The way her eyes sometimes seemed to shift color in the sunlight. The way she never got sick or hurt, no matter how reckless we were. How do I know you're telling the truth? I whispered. She raised her hand, and for a second, just a second, her skin shimmered like liquid silver. Her hair moved as if caught in an unseen current, her eyes glowing softly. It lasted only a moment, but it was enough. I took a step back, my breath catching. Oh, my God. I never wanted to leave, she said, her voice thick with emotion, but my people found out. They took me back before I could say goodbye. Why are you here now? I managed to ask. She hesitated, and took my hand, because I had to see you one last time. The warmth of her touch sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't just warmth, it was energy, life. A part of me had always felt something missing, an emptiness I couldn't explain, and now, standing here, I knew why. You changed me, Ethan, she said softly. I never forgot you. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. What happens now? A flicker of sadness crossed her face. I leave, this time, for good. Something inside me ached. Do you have to? She nodded. Yes. I didn't know what to say. There were no words for what I was feeling. All those years, I thought I had lost a childhood friend. Now I was losing something much more. She squeezed my hand one last time. Thank you for being my friend when I had no one else. I felt my throat tighten. I should be thanking you. She smiled warm, real, heartbreaking. Then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone, a soft shimmer in the air, and nothing more. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where she had been. The world around me felt different now, bigger, stranger. I wasn't sure what I believed anymore, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never forget Nia. I was locking up my bookstore for the night when I heard a voice behind me. You don't remember me, do you? I turned around. A woman stood there, wrapped in a long, flowing coat. Her silver hair shimmered under the streetlights, and her pale blue eyes held a strange glow. I'm sorry, do we know each other? I asked, searching her face. There was something eerily familiar about her. She smiled, a small, almost sad smile. I was your neighbor when we were kids. We used to play together every summer. I frowned. That's not possible. My childhood neighbor was. I trailed off. My mind went back to long-forgotten days, to the girl next door, Lena. We had been inseparable until one summer, when she and her family suddenly disappeared. No goodbyes, no explanation. Lena, I whispered. She nodded. It's me, Noah. I shook my head in disbelief. That can't be. You haven't aged a day since I last saw you. She exhaled slowly, and for a moment, it looked like her face shimmered, as if she wasn't quite solid. That's because I'm not human, Noah. My family weren't from this world. We had to leave, but I never forgot you. A chill ran down my spine. You're joking, right? She stepped closer. Do you remember the night I told you to meet me by the lake, the night before I disappeared? I did. I was 11. She had seemed so nervous, like she had something important to say. But I never made it. My parents had grounded me for sneaking out late the night before. The next day, her house was empty. I waited for you, but you never came, she said softly. And then we had to leave. My heart pounded. This was impossible. It had to be a trick. But deep inside, something told me she was telling the truth. Why are you here now? I asked. She hesitated. Because I had a choice, to return and see you one last time or to stay with my people forever. I swallowed, and after this, a sad look crossed her face. I have to leave again, for good. Something inside me ached at her words. Then why come back at all? Because I never forgot you, she said, her voice barely a whisper, and I needed to know if you remembered me, too. I did, every summer evening, every whispered secret, every moment of childhood wonder. And now, knowing the truth, knowing she had been waiting for me, that night it felt like I had lost something precious without even realizing it. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small, silver pendant. This is for you, a piece of my world, so you never forget. I took it, the metal cool against my palm. Will I ever see you again? She smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. In another life, maybe. A soft glow surrounded her, and before I could say another word, she was gone. I stood there, holding the pendant, feeling the weight of all the years between us. And I whispered, I never forgot you, Lena. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. I was locking up my bookstore for the night when I noticed someone standing by the street lamp across the road. The figure was tall, slender, and wrapped in a long coat. Something about them felt familiar, though I couldn't place it. As I turned to leave, a soft voice called out, Ethan. I frowned. See, it wasn't just my name, it was the way they said it, like a memory pulled from childhood. I turned back, my heart racing. The stranger stepped forward into the glow of the street lamp, and my breath caught in my throat. She had the same golden brown eyes I remembered from years ago, the same small scar on her cheek from when we climbed a fence as kids, but everything else had changed. Her skin had a faint shimmer, almost unnoticeable. Her hair, dark and smooth, had a subtle glow at the tips, and her features, though still human in shape, had an otherworldly perfection. Ethan, it's me, she said softly. Mira. I felt dizzy. Mira, the girl I grew up with. My best friend, one who moved away when we were 12, without warning, without a goodbye. This isn't possible, I whispered. She smiled, and for a second, she looked just like the girl I remembered. It is. I came back. I swallowed hard. But you left. You vanished. No one knew where you went. And now, I gestured at her, struggling to find the words. You're not human, she finished for me. I took a step back. My mind screamed that this wasn't real, that it had to be some kind of trick, but my heart knew otherwise. Mira sighed. I wanted to tell you back then, but I wasn't allowed. My family, your kin, had to leave. It was sudden. We couldn't risk being discovered. I shook my head. You're kind. She hesitated, then glanced around before speaking again, her voice barely above a whisper. We aren't from here, Ethan, not Earth. We came here a long time ago, blending in, living among humans, but something changed. It wasn't safe for us anymore. I stared at her, trying to process everything. You're saying you're an alien? She gave a small laugh. Yes, and so are my parents. But when I lived here, I was just a kid, just Mira, your best friend. I exhaled sharply. Why come back now? Her eyes softened. Because I never forgot you. The words hit me harder than I expected. Memories of us playing in the summer sun, racing our bikes down the street, sharing secrets under the old oak tree, it all came rushing back. But you were gone for so long, I said. Why now? She glanced up at the sky, a flicker of sadness in her eyes. Because things are changing again. My people, we might not be able to return here much longer. I needed to see you, to tell you the truth, at least once. I didn't know what to say. Then she stepped closer, her gaze searching mine. You were my only real friend, Ethan. I didn't want you to think I left because I wanted to. I felt a lump in my throat. I miss you, Mira. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something more, but instead, she just smiled. I have to go soon, she said, but I needed you to know. Something inside me ached. Will I ever see you again? She hesitated. I don't know, but I hope so. I didn't want her to leave, not again, not after just finding her, but I could see it in her eyes she had no choice. She took a step back, then another. The air around her shimmered slightly, like heat rising from the pavement. Goodbye, Ethan, she whispered. And then, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty street, my heart pounding. The night was silent, as if nothing had happened, but I knew better. Mira had come back. She was real, and somewhere out there, among the stars, she still remembered me. I was sitting in the park, my usual spot by the fountain. It was a quiet afternoon, with the sun casting warm golden rays on the trees. People passed by, some jogging, others walking their dogs, but my mind was elsewhere. My thoughts drifted back to my childhood, to the house I grew up in, the people I used to know, and the things I had long forgotten. I hadn't been back to my old neighborhood in years, not since I left for college and then moved to the city. Life had taken me on a whirlwind journey, and I had lost touch with most of the people I once knew. But today, something strange happened. I felt as though I was being watched. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, a fleeting thought that would pass like so many others, but the feeling only grew stronger, more intense. It was like someone was right behind me, breathing down my neck. I turned around, expecting to see a passerby, but there was no one there. Then, I saw her. A woman, standing just a few feet away, her eyes locked onto mine. She was beautiful, in a way that seemed almost otherworldly. Her features were delicate, with high cheekbones, flawless skin, and long dark hair that shimmered in the sunlight. She wore a simple dress, but there was something about her presence that made her stand out. It was like she didn't belong in this world, but at the same time, she felt strangely familiar. I stared at her, unsure of what to say. My heart raced in my chest as I tried to place her face. She didn't look like anyone I knew, not from the neighborhood or anywhere else, but something about her made me feel like I had seen her before. "Do you remember me?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. There was an odd, almost melodic quality to it, as if the words were flowing from her with ease. I blinked, trying to process her question. I don't think so," I replied, still searching her face for any hint of recognition. "I'm sorry, but I don't think we've met." She smiled then, a slow, knowing smile that made my heart skip a beat. "You don't remember me?" she asked again, her tone now laced with a hint of amusement. I frowned, feeling a sense of unease creeping up my spine. "No, I don't. Who are you?" The woman took a step closer, her eyes never leaving mine. "I'm someone you used to know, someone from your childhood." My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of my past. Who could she be? I was sure I hadn't seen her before, but her words made me question everything. Had I forgotten someone from my past? Someone important? "I used to live next door to you," she continued, her gaze now intense. "We were neighbors, remember?" I felt a chill run through me. My mind flashed back to my old neighborhood. I remembered the house next door, the one with the overgrown garden and the strange, quiet family that lived there, but I couldn't recall any specific details about them. They had always kept to themselves, never really interacting with anyone. There had been rumors, Of course, but nothing concrete. I shook my head. I don't remember, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The woman's smile widened, and she stepped even closer, now only a few inches from me. That's because you never knew the truth. I wasn't just your neighbor. Something else. My pulse quickened as I looked into her eyes, trying to understand what she was saying. What do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling. She took a deep breath, as if gathering her thoughts, then spoke in a calm, almost hypnotic tone. I'm not human, not in the way you think. I come from a place far beyond your world, from a species that has been watching over your kind for centuries. I was sent here to observe, to learn about humanity, to see if you were ready for the truth. I stared at her in disbelief, unable to process her words. What are you saying? Are you an alien? She nodded, her smile fading into a more serious expression. Yes, I am, and I've been living among you for longer than you can imagine. I was the girl next door, the one you never paid much attention to. I was watching you, just as you were watching me, but you never saw me for what I truly was. I felt a mix of shock and awe, but there was no fear. Somehow, it all made sense. The strange feeling I had when I was around her as a child, the way she always seemed to be watching me from a distance. It wasn't just coincidence. She had been there all along, and now, she was revealing the truth. You're not afraid? She asked, her voice gentle now. No, I answered, shaking my head. I don't know what to think, but I'm not afraid. She smiled again, this time with warmth in her eyes. Good, because I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to show you something that will change everything you know about the world and your place in it. And just like that, I knew that my life would never be the same again. The truth had been revealed, and I had to embrace it. My childhood neighbor, the one I never knew, had been an alien all along, and now, we were standing together, ready to face the unknown future, the future of humanity and the universe, all connected in ways I had never imagined. Do you remember me, human? It's been years since we last saw each other. I was just a little girl, no older than 8, and you were my best friend. I lived next door to you, in the house with the red mailbox, always playing in the yard while you kicked a ball around. We spent hours pretending to be astronauts, flying across galaxies, battling monsters, and discovering new worlds. Little did you know, I was already from another world. When we were children, I blended in perfectly. My family moved in from nowhere, and no one questioned us. We kept to ourselves mostly, just like your family. But there were moments when I had to remind myself not to act differently, not to reveal the truth that I wasn't like everyone else, the truth that I wasn't from Earth. My name, or the name I was given here, was Ayla, but my real name was Sorath, and my true form, well, you wouldn't recognize me as I am now. I had to be careful with my shape-shifting abilities, especially around you, but you were always so curious, always asking questions, always wanting to know more about the world around you. You might not have known it then, but I knew everything about you. I watched you grow up, watched you struggle through high school, and even cheered you on when you joined the soccer team. I wanted to tell you the truth, but I couldn't. I couldn't risk blowing my cover. So, I stayed silent, always waiting for the right moment, always hoping that someday you would understand. Years passed, we both went on with our lives. You left for college, and I stayed here. I had to. You never returned after that, and I was forced to leave as well. It wasn't safe for me anymore, but my mission here was complete. I had watched, I had observed, and now it was time to return home. My people had called for me, and I had no choice but to go. But before I left, I had one final task, to see you again. I couldn't just vanish without saying goodbye. I had to see you one last time, to explain everything. And so, years later, I found myself standing at your door again. It was strange. You were no longer the young boy I had known, full of energy and excitement. You had grown into a man, a stranger in a sense, but I still saw that same spark in your eyes, that same curiosity. It was as though no time had passed at all. I knocked on the door, and when you answered, it was as if the years melted away. You didn't recognize me at first. Of course. How could you? I had changed much. My true form had taken over. though I made sure to keep it hidden. Instead, I wore the same human face I had so carefully crafted over the years, the face you had seen when we were children. Do you remember me? I asked softly, my heart racing. You stared at me, trying to make sense of it all. Ayla, you said slowly, your voice unsure. Is that really you? I nodded. Yes, it's me. You stepped back, inviting me inside. We Saturday together, just like old times. It felt like nothing had changed, but everything had. I could see the questions in your eyes, the confusion, the disbelief, but I wasn't here to explain everything right away. I wanted you to understand, but I also didn't want to overwhelm you. I kept it simple. You probably don't remember, but I was never really from here, I said, the words leaving my lips before I could stop them. I'm from a place far away, from another planet. I came to Earth on a mission to learn about your people, your way of life, but somewhere along the way, I got attached to you. Your eyes widened. What do you mean? What kind of mission was this? Why didn't you tell me? I sighed, trying to find the right words. I wasn't allowed to tell you. My people, they have strict rules about interacting with your kind. But I couldn't help it. You were my best friend, and I wanted to tell you everything. I wanted to be honest with you, but I couldn't risk my mission, and I couldn't risk your safety. But, why now? You asked, your voice soft but full of emotion. Why come back after all this time? Because I had to, I replied, my gaze steady, because I've realized that Earth is my home now, too. And you're my family? In a way, I couldn't leave without you knowing the truth. You paused for a moment, letting my words sink in. Then, slowly, you smiled. You're still the same Ayla I knew. You may not be from here, but that doesn't change what we shared. It doesn't change who you are. Tears welled up in my eyes, though I tried to hide them. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. I didn't want to hurt you, but I needed you to know. You don't have to apologize. You said softly, I understand now, and no matter where you're from, you'll always be my friend. In that moment, I realized that Earth, my new home, was more than just a place I had been sent to observe. It was where I had learned to care, to love, and to grow. And with you, the human I had once called my neighbor, I found something I never expected, belonging.